Legendary Xander is a long-awaited legendary unit who's finally here as an Axe Cavalier, and he is a fire legendary unit, and he does boost your attack and also has the pair-up effect, and he of course has Garen's Bulwark Axe, which is really amazing. I wonder if Garen's ever going to be getting an ult with this axe, which is, pretty iconic for him. So Legendary Xander's Ebon Bulwark gives him -1 special cooldown, which is really great with this kind of weapon, and makes Gale Force into a 4 cooldown special, and also makes Bonfire into a 2 cooldown special. And at start of turn, if he's within 2 spaces of 2 or more allies, then he can get null follow up and special acceleration per attack for 1 turn. So this is a status effect that can happen at start of the turn. So this means that it is again going to be susceptible to false start of units like Elimine. So having null follow up is really good as a Cavalier, and he also gets special cooldown charge +1 per attack. So this is actually the same effect as Wordbreaker of Thor, which means that on both his foes' attacks and his own attacks, he can get the special acceleration. And this is really good because he can trigger 4 cooldown specials like Gale Force really easily, or just retaliate back with 2 cooldown specials like Bonfire and Luna. And this can also free him up from running stuff like Heavy Blade, which a lot of Cavaliers have to run if they want to trigger these kinds of high cooldown specials. So that is pretty good for Xander. And then if he initiates combat or if he's within 2 spaces of an ally, then he can get +5 to all of his stats, and he gets 7 HP post-combat healing. So this post-combat healing is going to be a bit counterproductive if you're going to be trying to fall into the Wings of Mercy range, but it is really excellent if you're trying to make him into a tanky mixed phase Cavalier, which he is essentially with this kind of base kit. So he can be really bulky with that damage reduction and the healing that he can get, and it does give him more longevity, which is really good. He does have Luna as a special, and then he has got attack speed catch 4, which is pretty standard for a Cavalier. And then he has got his personal skill from Fates as his exclusive slot B skill in Chivalry. So this does have Neotrace built into it, which means that it is not a flat Canto like of Legendary Ephraim or Reginn. And at start of combat, if foe's HP is above half, then he can inflict -5 attack speed and defense debuff on the foe during the combat, and then he can also have damage reduction based on the HP of the foe at start of the combat. So pretty much against a full HP opponent, he's going to be getting 50% damage reduction straight up. And if the opponent is at half HP, then he's going to be getting 25% damage reduction. So it is going to be based on opponent's HP and the level it is at, not the actual HP number. I know some people have that misconception, but basically if he's going to be facing a full HP opponent, like he's going to be most of the time, then he's going to be getting a lot of damage reduction, and that is pretty good with the null follow-up built into his weapon, and that kind of makes him as an infantry unit who usually runs null follow-up and damage reduction, but he has got that Canto remaining +1, and he's also Cavalier, so he does have better mobility. We have seen so many units with damage reduction and null follow-up, but this is the Cavalier to have that, and also, pretty easy to get damage reduction. And then finally he has got Colorless Feud, which is probably for Elise or I guess Legendary Corrin. But yeah, goofing aside, this is easily one of the best feud skills to have because a lot of support units in the game are colorless, like Flane or Elimine, and there are of course a lot of colorless tanks like Fallen Edelgard or Medius or Ashe. So against a lot of these colorless units, your feud skill is going to be helping you tremendously. So this is a pretty nice skill to have, but there are definitely other options which you can run, which I'll go over in a moment. So overall, Legendary Xander's main role is going to be of a mixed phase Axe Cavalier. And this year we definitely have got a lot of Axe Cavaliers like Fallen Gustav, Groom Roy, and then recently Summer Dimitri, who's insane with that atrocity and dual phase brave weapon. And now Xander, who fills a different niche compared to them. Obviously offensively compared to Summer Dimitri is not going to be hitting as hard, but he does have better bulk because of that damage reduction in the enemy phase, so he can function a bit better in the mixed phase compared to those Cavaliers. And he does really, and the special cooldown acceleration that he gets from his weapon can also make him as a pretty good Gale Force unit, because he does have an easier time triggering it, but of course he doesn't have access to a tempo skill or something that can get him past the guard effect, so there he can struggle a bit, but Legendary Xander is definitely pretty flexible because of his weapon and his slot B skill. Seeing his base kit, Xander is easily going to be a fast Cavalier, which is kind of unexpected for him because he's not exactly a fast unit in like Fates, but here he's definitely different, and being a fast Cavalier, he can differentiate himself from a slow Cavalier like Fallen Gustav, for example, and he's going to be a lot less susceptible to the enemy's null follow-up and getting doubled by the enemy because of having that speed. So the speed with null follow-up is always going to be amazing. Overall, Legendary Xander is a pretty solid Axe Cavalier who can function in the mixed phase, and he's among the best when it comes to being a mixed phase Cavalier. The damage reduction and null follow-up gives him something which a lot of Cavaliers lack, and as a class, Cavaliers don't have easy access to those skills. You either have to provide them with some kind of support or, do something like that. But Xander is pretty self-sufficient with that in his weapon, and I don't think he's going to be too insane, but he's definitely solid and should not be underestimated. He's not going to be anything that is going to be breaking the meta, which is, not something every unit needs to be doing. But if you like him a lot, then he can be a unit who can function pretty well as a Cavalier. And there are also some spicy things which you can do with his Slotse. So Colorless Feud is nice, but he can always run Sweet Smoke 4 to stack up more damage reduction. This of course is going to be not helping you against damage reduction piercing, against Deadeye or Lethality or, Legendary Nana. And Attack Speed Menace is also a pretty good option. And then finally, Pulse Smoke can be a nice option for summoner duels because Xander is a lot bulkier than a lot of the Cavaliers, so you can go in and safely Pulse Smoke down the pre-charged specials and the Hardy Fighter armor units. And we're probably going to be seeing him in summoner duels quite a bit because he is fast and he's actually going to be bulky in the enemy phase as well. And he can just run specials like Luna or Bonfire, which are 2 cooldown specials. And Gale Force is also something that Xander could do because of his weapon. And he can also run Ruptured Sky and pre-charge it with like Duochrome or just by running Cook and Pulse. So his specials have options, and like I said, Legendary Xander is pretty flexible. And now let's take a look at where Legendary Xander places on the Fire Legendary tier list. So in tier 1, it is going to be Eitri, and she's easily the queen of the fire season because she's got the range Canto and she can actually be pretty deceptively bulky because of her Slobby skill and all of the debuffs that she can get. Not to mention, she is going to be a pretty good unit to be used in Aether Raid's offense or in summoner duels. So she does have her shortcomings in form of null follow-up and Hardy Fighter, Deflect Magic, Far Safe tanks, but overall she's going to be a pretty solid fire legendary unit compared to the rest of them. And then I would put Legendary Xander in tier 2. So Legendary Xander, like I said, is not really too insane, but he's still quite solid even though, his base kit does contain the things which we have seen before, like null follow-up, damage reduction, trade skill, and all of that. But still the mixed phase utility is there with the cavalry mobility. And he's the highest scoring arena fire legendary unit here, so if you are aiming for the scoring, then Legendary Xander is at the top because of his slot B skill and also because of the modern legendary unit scoring that he's going to be having. Not to mention he's going to be seeing some usage in summoner duels as well competitively because of his mixed phase niche, and he's going to be dying to Legendary Nana, of course, who's really solid in summoner duels, but still against a lot of the units he can survive, and especially when he's backed up by a solid far safe tank, he can definitely function a lot better. He can also be used as a hit and run unit in the Chaos season, in Aether Raids, or just in Aether Raids offense whenever it's going to be the fire season. He's not going to be able to set out Wings of Mercy that easily because of the healing of his weapon, and that's why he's mainly going to be functioning with hit and run. I also have Legendary Lilina and Legendary Marth in tier 2. So Legendary Lilina does have good AoE nuking potential, especially if you run a Dancer in Arena, then she can definitely help you quite a bit. But her main downfall comes from the far safe tanks and Gifted Magic not really having the biggest AoE range essentially. So a lot of smart players can basically avoid their far safe tank from getting hit by the AoE special of Gifted Magic and only take the in-combat damage. So that can be a bit annoying for her, but having the cavalry mobility with the AoE nuking potential is going to be pretty nice. And then Legendary Marth did have a pretty nice weapon refine and a remix, and he can function as a pretty good sword infantry unit. And not to mention now he does have access to Speed Smoke 4, which you could run if you want to get the damage reduction on him. Still, quite a bit of competition when it comes to a sword infantry unit. And then in tier 3 we have got Legendary Ephraim, Legendary Hector, and Legendary Celica. So Ephraim and Hector do have useful niches. Just because they are in tier 3 does not mean that they are bad or anything like that. It's just that the units above them fit into the meta a bit more easily. But still, Legendary Ephraim and Legendary Hector can be useful. Legendary Ephraim does have that tempo skill in his Thought Beast skill, and he did get a pretty nice refine as well, which can let him use the high cooldown specials. And then Legendary Hector does have that Tactic Time Pulse in his Ostia Pulse too, which can be really helpful for, accelerating the special cooldown charge of a lot of units which don't have access to those kinds of skills like flyers and cavaliers. But still, now we do have Duochrome, which is, quite a popular unit to be used in many competitive game modes for accelerating the special cooldown charge, and not every kind of team needs a Legendary Hector essentially. But unfortunately in Arena he does have that one movement, so that could be a bit annoying, and his combat has definitely improved because of his weapon refine. Legendary Celica does want a weapon refine and a remix though, because there are a lot of green infantry mages which can hit really hard and have null follow-up. Main example being Legendary Male Violet, who can nuke a lot harder because of his preferred special, and also because of having null follow-up in his weapon. Legendary Celica does have null follow-up in her weapon and also has Desperation, but it's not exactly like a dive bomb effect like Ullr's Slot B, for example, so she has to initiate first and fall into her Desperation range, which can be a bit annoying in Arena because she might not survive a lot of first encounters. She can have the potential of being better, but just like Legendary Alm, she also needs a weapon refine. And then in tier 4, we have Legendary Edelgard and Legendary Roy. So these two units get heavily outclassed by their competition, and Legendary Edelgard is definitely not the easiest unit to be used in Arena, despite having, a lot of actions with her Slot B skill and Gale Force. The reason being is that she is a one movement armor unit who wants to have a solo playstyle, and you'll have to run something that can solve for mobility issues. And not to mention we have Summer Edelgard now, who has a much better player phase than Legendary Edelgard, also has better movement, and also has better enemy phase because of the dual phase brave weapon that she has got. But she's not exactly going to be helping you too much in Arena, and in Either Raid's offense and defense you can always use Summer Edelgard, and in Summoner duels as well she's not really going to be shining. So yeah, Legendary Edelgard also needs some kind of weapon refine honestly. And Legendary Roy of course does suffer quite a bit, but he's going to be getting his remix and refine in July, so this could definitely change the next time I make the Fire Legendary tier list. Unfortunately this time I'm not going to be able to cover every single unit like I usually do in these Legendary and Mythic banners, and for that I do apologize, but still I wanted to make the video because a lot of people have been waiting for Xander. So overall this banner does provide you with some good green value with Eitri and Xander color shearing, so these are two Fire Legendary units if you wanna merge them up, and both of them can be pretty solid units. And blue does have Ascended Ishtar with Ullr and Nott, who all can be good units. Colorless is going to be a bit more lackluster and niche with August and Niime. And then Legendary Leif is a bit older Legendary unit, and he doesn't exactly have a very good fodder. And red is actually pretty nice with two good cavaliers with Legendary Sigurd and Reginn, but its value does get decreased by Leif, who does have good fodder, but his combat potential isn't exactly too great. We're going to be getting another summer banner actually, and Legendary Roy and Yune are going to be getting their remix banner. And we could potentially get a 3 Hopes banner in July as well because it's a recent game. And at the end of the next month, we could get an Anima Mythic because of the color sharing that we have with Medius and Ashera. And Medius is definitely a pretty solid unit and a recent one as well. So that's why it could be a colorless Anima Mythic, because we haven't really got an Anima Mythic since Ullr from the last year. It could even be red because Legendary Nana is there, and she's definitely quite high value because of her amazing player phase essentially. So let me know in the comments what you think about this banner, and if you enjoyed this video then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps out tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes take about as much time as Legendary Xander took after Legendary Ryoma. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.